Section 6-2 is very similar to 6-1. You are continuing to compare decimals, percents, and fractions. So we're going to review that, and then the biggest difference is now you have to put these numbers in order. Okay, so for example, let's say that we have 68%. So we see this is written as a percent, and we start as a percent, and we're going to a fraction. So if we start as a percent, it's 68%. I know percent means out of 100. So 68% as a fraction is simply 68 out of 100. And I know it's out of 100 because it's percent, and percent means out of 100. So 68% as a fraction is 68 over 100. Now this fraction can be reduced or simplified. If I press simplify on my calculator, or if I divide the top and bottom by the greatest common factor, which is 4, I would get an answer of 17/25. So 68% written as a fraction would be 68 over 100, or 17 over 25. Now here we have 68% again, but now we're going to write it as a decimal. So I'm going from percent to decimal. And I know if I start with 68%, I can think of my decimal point being right there, right after the number, and to change it to a decimal, I simply move my decimal place 2 to the left. So 1, 2, my new decimal place would go there. So 68% written as a decimal would be 0.68. Okay, let's try the next one. Now we have the fraction 5 over 100. Okay, so we need to write this as a percent. There are two ways you can do this. The first thing is I know that out of 100 means percent. You can see up here, remember, percent means out of 100. So if I have 100 on the bottom, and I know percent means out of 100, I can use my reasoning to figure out, oh, well, 5 out of 100 is 5%. Another way that you can do this is, and I'll just put a little squiggle so you can see the two ways, is we can go ahead and divide to turn this into a decimal, and then turn it into a percent from there. So I have my fraction 5 over 100. For that to become a decimal, I simply do 5 divided by 100, and that gives me an answer of 0.05. Okay? So 0.05, now we have this decimal, and if I want to go from a decimal to a percent, I simply move my decimal place to the right. 1, 2, now it's there, so it would be 5%. So 5%, 5%. There's two different ways you can see that I did this. First, I just wrote, 5 over 100, out of 100 means percent, so 5 over 100 is 5%. Or, I know that if my fraction is 5 over 100, I can divide 5 divided by 100 to get my decimal 0.05, and I can convert my decimal 0.05 to 5%. Okay? This method probably you'll use when the fraction is not out of 100. Going from fraction to percent only works this way is if the bottom number is 100. Okay? Because percent means out of 100. Right? Now we have our last one. We have this decimal 2.36. Okay? And we want to go to a percent. So we have 2.36, and we want to make that a percent. So the easiest way to do that is we have, we have 2.36, and to change a decimal to a percent, we simply move our decimal place to the right. So 1, 2. So my new percent is 236% because my decimal point is now after the 6. Okay, so now we are going to practice putting these in order from least to greatest. This up here, what I just did, should be kind of a review. Okay, so now I'm going to use this information to put these in order from least to greatest. I know how to go back and forth between fractions and decimals and percents, and I'm going to use that info to get these numbers in order. So the thing that I have to do is I have to convert them all to the same in order to compare them. So if you look right here, you can see, okay, I have a percent, I have a decimal, a fraction, and a fraction. They have to all be the same in order to put them in order. Okay, so make sure you write that in your notes. They all have to be the same. Okay? Now, I find working with decimals is the easiest. So I'm going to convert these all to decimals. Okay? So first I have my number, 34%. Okay? So 34%, I know if I have 34%, my decimal point's right here. To turn it to a decimal, I just simply move it 2 to the left. So 1, 2. So my new number is 0.34. So 34% written as a decimal is 0.34. Okay? Now I go to my next number, and that's 0.3456. Well, that's already written as a decimal, so I don't have to change anything. So I have 0.346. Okay? Now both of these are written as decimals. So I've done this one, I've done this one, now I'm on to this one. Oh, that one's written as a decimal too, so I don't have to do anything. I like that. So now we have 2.34. So we have our 3 things written as decimals. We go to the next one, 34 over 10. That is not a decimal. So in order to go from a fraction to a decimal, I am going to simply divide, okay? So I have right here, I would do 34 divided by 10, and that's going to give me an answer of 3.4. Okay? So I can write that right here. So that's 3.4. All right, and I have one last term, and that is right here. We have 343 over 100. You can see this is a decimal answer. So guess what this one has to be? You got it, a decimal. So I'm going to change this fraction into a decimal by simply dividing, because that's how I convert from a fraction to a decimal. So for this one, I'm going to do, it's 343 divided by 100. It says 100, not 1,000, 100. Okay, 343 divided by 100 equals 3.43. So my last amount is 3.43. So that's what this one is. Okay, so now I have all of my values written as decimals, and this allows me to compare them. So if I'm going to go ahead and compare them, and I can look here and see that I have a problem because these already happen to be in order from least to greatest. You can see 0.34 is less than 1. 0.34 is smaller than 0.346 because this 6 on the end is more than the invisible 0 that is here. So just keep in mind, if you have a decimal, let's say that you have like 0.23, and then I have 0.238. 0.238 is bigger because of this 8. There's nothing here, so you think of it as simply as 0. Okay, so that's why 0.34 is smaller than 0.346. Then we go to the next. Go to the next value, which is 2.34. We have a whole number, which is 2. So we know that's bigger than this. But our whole number over here is 3. We know 2 is smaller than 3. So this is the next biggest number. Now, our next two numbers, we have 3.4 and 3.43. 3.4 is smaller than 3.43 because there's nothing here. And here we have a 3. 3 is bigger than nothing. So that is why 3.43 is larger than 3.4. So you can see these numbers are in order from least to greatest. Least to greatest, okay?